Hello, I'm Professor Bartlett, and in this short lecture, we're going to be going through the fundamentals of 1-point and 2-point perspective. I'll be guiding you through some of the basic vocabulary in those principles, and then in the second half of this video, lecture and demo, I will be showing you how this is executed. Although we'll be going through 1-point and 2-point perspective, the demo will be geared around 2-point perspective, creating a horizon line, 2 vanishing points, and then some boxes that are set up with the 2-point perspective system. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with drawing fundamentals and our lesson on perspective. So by definition, perspective is any graphic system that is used to create the illusion of three-dimensional space on a 2-dimensional surface. So it's spatial illusion. If I just pick up a piece of paper here, so my notebook here, I've got some notes on it, you can see that it is flat and that anything that I create here that gives you the idea of space is imaginary, because we know that behind this sheet of paper or this notebook, there's really nothing here, right? So it's actually a flat item. And then if I created something that looked 3-dimensional here, I would be creating an illusion for you. Kind of magic of sorts. Another way to kind of show this is, since I have my, iPad, all of my iPad accoutrements here, one way you can also look at that, and especially when talking about 1-point perspective, is that idea. So here's my iPad pencil that's in a box. Depending on how I look at this box, I'm going to kind of line it up to the camera. It's either flat to the viewer eye, so you're looking at a singular plane here, or if I rotate it, you start to see it moving back in space. So when I'm moving it here, I'm showing you 2-point perspective. One plane is going this direction and another plane is going this direction. Or if I tilt it up above my eye level, you can start to see the top of this box. Or if I go lower down, you can see the top here, actually when I go here, bottom more so, and then top here, okay? So a lot of this is based on both your viewpoint, the vanishing point, and then also your eye level when you're engaging with the object. Again, we'll kind of see this a little bit more when we get into the demo, okay? And thinking about where the horizon line is placed and how the boxes lay on that horizon line. Okay, so the key thing to remember is perspective is a graphic system, and that it's also allowing you to create a 3-dimensional illusion on a 2D surface. This also goes hand in hand with foreshortening. So one of the other examples I like to use for foreshortening is we know when we're looking again at the iPencil box that there's some depth here. Okay, that this box is long. We can see that it's a long rectangle. But depending on how I line it up with the camera, we can't see this length to you. We're not going to record all of this length, or it's going to look tipped up or distorted, or as though things don't sit back in space, right? So there's a certain amount of foreshortening. We don't record this entire length of the box going back. We foreshorten it, we make it shorter, so that we can see that this would lie down as we draw it, okay? So foreshortening, and this also has to do with scaling. So a lot of times with foreshortening, objects will be larger in the front and then smaller in the back. And sometimes there's a certain amount of exaggeration to this. I'm gonna show you in the subsequent slides where this happens, so that you really get the feeling that things recede in space. So foreshortening is a method of rendering a specific object or figure in a picture in depth. The artist records in various degrees the distortion, remember this is distortion, another part of the illusion that happens, when an object or figure is viewed at a distance or at an unusual angle. Okay, so we're gonna look at the next slides, which are image examples, and where perspective in foreshortening takes place. Okay, so this is an example in nature where 1-point perspective happens. Again, 1-point perspective is not usually your natural perspective. You kind of have to align yourself either on the train tracks, middle of the street, right down a hallway to make 1-point perspective happen. It really does have to do with positioning, vanishing point, and then horizon line. Again, as you're walking through your day-to-day life, you more often see things in 2-point, even 3-point perspective. That's kind of a natural way that the architecture in your life occurs. But 1-point perspective is one of the earliest perspectives and one of the first systems that you want to know as you kind of grasp the basics of it. Again, it does occur in nature, but you kind of have to place yourself there. So as you can see in this image, there is the train tracks going down to the middle, which is a vanishing point at the end. There is a horizon line, which is the tree line there. And then all the other kind of implied lines and implied angles that take you back to this vanishing point, 1-point perspective at the end of the train tracks. You'll also notice that the train tracks are drastically bigger in the foreground of the picture than they are in the background of the picture. If we move to this diagram, which is basically just a graphic rendition of what you just saw there, this kind of also gives, and minus the trees are a little different here, but it gives you another idea of how 1-point perspective was working in the train track picture. Okay, so you had the vanishing point, one vanishing point directly at the middle, the horizon line in the back, which actually represents not just the horizon in the photo itself, but where your eye level is, so where you're standing. So for example, the horizon line, if it's higher, that means your eyes were looking up more. If the horizon line is lower, that means that you're looking down. Okay, so you want to kind of think about the horizon line, just not nature, not just the trees in the back, but also where your eyes are placed when you're looking off into the distance. Okay, so you can see we not only have the lines of the road in the middle there, but also these implied lines as everything in the image goes back to that 1-point perspective in the distance. You can see on the left-hand side that those kind of, basic graphic trees in the front are a lot bigger than those graphic trees in the back because it's forcing the foreshortening and also helping with the perspective. If you were to draw 1-point perspective boxes, do those exercises. Again, for this particular demo, we're gonna go straight to 2-point perspective. But you could see what you do is put that vanishing point right back there in the middle. And then you have the horizon line. And then all of the angles, so with 1-point perspective, you have everything front facing. So again, 1-point perspective, got my eye pencil box. And so 1-point perspective, you're looking straight at the front of that. 2-point perspective, I turn it slightly, okay? So here you can see in this diagram, I'm gonna be moving that above my eye level, above the horizon line, and below to create these boxes that are in this particular picture plane here. So again, front is front facing. All angles receding from the front facing plane go right back to that 1-point perspective dot in the middle there, that vanishing point. So you can see everything's aligned. If a box is below the vanishing point, below the horizon line and then to the right, as you see there, then you're going to see the left side of that box, but the right side will be hidden because everything is going back. You can't see it as it's turned towards the vanishing point going back to the horizon. If it's above, you see left and below. If the box is to the left, you see right facing. Okay, so that's what you're seeing in the diagram there. To give a little history on this, why do we have 1-point perspective? Well, like I said, it's one of the early perspective systems, kind of gets you used to using that illusion of 3D space on a 2-dimensional surface. It's also quite often used in Renaissance paintings that were highlighting biblical stories, or they were highlighting bishops, or they were highlighting important figureheads. One advantage of using 1-point perspective is that you could place the main subject in the middle and that all the sight lines in the piece, so you can see in the Last Supper, Da Vinci's Last Supper, that all of the disciples lead to Jesus in the middle, or Christ in the middle, and that all of the architecture also is leading to that. So historically, those viewing the pieces could be very clear on what the main subject was. So not only does 1-point perspective function as a training tool for learning the basics of perspective, but it does also historically with Renaissance pieces, so on and so forth, allow that main subject to be seen. So you'll see with a lot of older work, let's say Renaissance work, medieval painting, things like that, you're going to see that one point perspective is heavily used to help the viewers with the subject. Okay, so for today's demo and today's practice, we're going to be working on 2-point perspective. It is exactly like 1-point perspective, except it has 2 vanishing points. And again, instead of looking at the box straight towards you, you're turning it to the side. So you're seeing the corner present, not the face present, but the corner present. And then the planes go back to 2 vanishing points in the distance. Again, this is going to be the type of perspective that you're most likely to encounter on your day-to-day basis. Walking around, side of a building, edge of the sidewalk. Most everything that we deal with architecturally will fall under the 2-point perspective umbrella. To set up today, you're going to have the vanishing point and then horizon line, and then 2 vanishing points, one on the left-hand side, one on the right-hand side. You want to keep these way out to the edge of your page so that you have enough room to create some distance with the box that you create. As you can see in this diagram, you're going to start with the presenting edge. That's that first edge here. And then you're going to bring out those angles both to vanishing point 1 and vanishing point 2, then closing off the sides of the box there. Again, I'll be going through this step by step in a physical demo, so you'll further be able to see and understand what's happening here. You continue to fill that out with those angles, tops and bottoms. Now with the top and bottom, you want to crisscross. A lot of times what I do is I say you put the presenting edge, you go side to side, and then you need to crisscross to top that box. It's a little different than 1-point perspective because you can kind of close off that box at the end and the top is made with some of the first strokes there. But with the 2-point perspective, you have to crisscross the sides, so one side to the other, okay, after you've made your major angles, and that will give you that point in the back here that will close off the top or the bottom of the box, depending on whether or not it's below or above the horizon line. When you're all done with your exercise today, you want to erase all of your guidelines and then sharpen your edges so that you have a nice clean box in space. For today's exercise, we'll do about 3 to 5, just depending on how much we have time for. Okay, that is all for the PowerPoint lecture right now. In this next segment, you're going to watch me draw this out. So all you're going to need for this exercise is your straight edge, a kneaded eraser, and then you can use your 2B pencil. I'm going to do a demo in a small space, and then you can expand it to the larger edges of the page as you're working through your exercises today. Okay, so as I said, the horizon line represents eye level. If it's a little higher, that means that you're looking up. If it's a little lower, that means you're looking somewhat down. I'm just going to kind of keep it on the higher side, making sure to keep my ruler straight, level with the page. And I'm going to go ahead and draw that horizon line. I usually represent that by saying HL. I label it as HL, or sometimes I put an I there to say that this is eye level. The next thing I need for 2-point perspective is 2 vanishing points. So here I'm going to put vanishing point 1, and over here I'm going to put vanishing point 2. And I might move some of these labels real quick, just so there's not all this confusing documentation. Horizon line. Put that into the frame a little bit here. Horizon line, I. Okay, there we go. So as stated in the lecture, when you're doing 2-point perspective, the presenting edge of the box you create is going to be your starting point. So it's not the face. When I say the face, I mean a rectangle or a square. Instead, it is the corner that will present to you as you're creating the planes that move back in space. Okay, so using your ruler either above or below the horizon line, you'll want to make that what I call a presenting edge. Make sure that it's nice and vertical. This can be as long or short as you want, just depends on what height you want the box to be. I usually start with my first vanishing point just to kind of keep in order. So you're going to want to draw the lines out. So this face here, which is receding, so it's going back in space, you're going to do the bottom and the top, connecting with vanishing point 1 here. Okay. Again, using your ruler, straight edge. Okay. We'll move to the opposite side, vanishing point 2, and do the same thing. You'll see now the presenting edge is closer to vanishing point 1, which makes this edge shorter and this one longer. This is a longer distance to vanishing point 2. Okay. The next thing that you want to do, get rid of some of the lines that are not perfect here. Try to get on the point as much as possible. Sorry. Okay. The next thing that you're going to want to do is create the depth of the box that you've created. Okay, you need to create the depth before you create the top. And now you're only going to see the top of this box because we are below the horizon line, below eye level. So this can be as long or short as you'd like. So I'm going to make a little shorter depth here. Again, I could bring it all the way out here if I wanted to, make more of a rectangle, but I'm going to go with more of a square shape, a cube. And again, this distance doesn't have to be the same as that distance. So it could be short here, it could be longer here, so on and so forth. So it's whatever you choose. Okay. Sometimes I try to kind of keep it close though, because that will make more sense. It will be more compact in the end. Okay. Sure, again, one thing you might want to do is line up with this vertical here, something that I should do as well, to just make sure that this is as straight as possible and lining up with the vertical you created. That is the most important part. So your initial vertical or presenting edge should line up with the backside of the cube that you've created. Okay, the last thing that you need to do before this cube is complete is to crisscross. Remember in the lecture, crossing those hands? So you take the left-hand side and connect it with the right-hand side, vanishing point 2. Okay, you take the right-hand side and you connect it with the left-hand side, which is vanishing point 1. Okay, and between that action, you create the back side or the back corner. Again, if this was transparent, you would kind of see this line back here. You'd be seeing through the cube. But you create that back corner here by that crisscross action, okay? So now I have the left side, the right side, and the top of my box. Before you're done, you wanna get rid of some of your guidelines here, okay? Reinforce your angles and edges, and you can work on that just a little bit more, kind of clean it up, okay? And create a few more. Now I would do one here, one at the top, just to get an idea of what those 2-point perspective cubes would look like in space.